Hey, good morning. I thought we'd talk about my uncle. So, I had an uncle, Uncle Nick, my mother's brother, and he was gay and awesome. My dad wasn't really there for us. He wasn't a bad person, but he was quite absent because he was an alcoholic. And spent most of his time drinking instead of being a father. I'll turn down the defroster so you can hear me. Gosh, it got cold here last night. I don't know how cold, but I do believe it was in the mid-20s. It was at 30 when I got in the car, and it's had the sun out for a while. So I'm imagining by 6 a.m. it was probably 27, 28 degrees. It might have been colder. I had to turn on both heaters last night and I was still freezing, you know. It's like, oh my goodness, it was so cold. And for, this area of Northern California, I guess up here in the hills it does get cold. I drove through here and just the water on the ground with steam coming off of it. I thought, that's just strange. And the creek was steaming. I was like, that's just weird. I guess the surrounding air was that cold and the water coming off the mountainside was warmer? I don't know. So my uncle was in British Columbia, Canada until I was, say, 4 years old or something. So I didn't see him very much. And of course, when I was 4, I was kind of clued into the whole idea that I wasn't female. And that was very distressing, and I didn't know how to handle it. I was a tiny kid, I was a little bitty kid. What did I know? So, he entered my life, and I knew immediately that he was very special, dear to me, and he liked spending time with me as well. He was very musically inclined, and I gravitated towards his musical abilities. As much as I wish I had the musical abilities that he has, I don't. But I do enjoy that I've learned from him and do play the instruments a little, just not as much as I would like. I remember when I was 5 and we were at Grandma's house and we were talking about marriage, and I asked him, I said, Uncle Nick, why aren't you married? You're such a good person. I just don't know why you're not married. And he said, well, I don't really believe in the institute of marriage. And he didn't explain anything, but my mother caught wind of this, or maybe I had said something like, gosh, Uncle Nick should be married. Why doesn't he believe in marriage, My mother got really upset. So I'm imagining as my uncle, hadn't been back home for maybe, less than a year or so. And my mother was probably struggling with the whole, coming out issue. I don't know if that was a new thing that, my uncle had come out to my mother and his sisters, or his other sister, or not at that time. But I do know that Mom was a bit prickly on that one particular occasion, and really got after him. Granted, Mom was younger those days and not quite as mature as she was in later years, but I remember that quite clearly. Later, I did know and understand. I think I was 6 or 7 when it was all rather explained to me, and I understood it, and I understood it just fine. Wasn't a big deal for me. I loved my uncle, and it didn't matter who he loved. So everyone was like, oh, wow, okay, that was easy. You're little kids accept things. And me being myself, wasn't a problem for me to accept this idea. So fast forward a few years, and I'm struggling badly and realizing I'm losing touch with my mother on the topic of gender about the age of 9. So by the time I'm 10, I'm really struggling to figure things out. And I turned to my uncle, who at that point had been someone who took the place of my father, knowing that my father wasn't available to us kids, he made himself available to us. Maybe my mom had asked him. I don't know. Oh my God. Wow. It's possible, but all I can tell you is he stepped in where a father was desperately needed, and I felt extremely close to him and never wanted to upset him in any fashion whatsoever. I actually remember saying something snarky once when I was 10. We were downstairs in the basement. He was looking for an extension cord, and it was probably something that people said once in a while to me, and I don't know. He couldn't find it, and I said, "Oh, it's right in front of your nose." And he said, "Well, that's not very nice." That's all it took. I mean, I was in tears. I would never have wanted to upset my uncle, or my aunt for that matter. My parents, oh, heck with him. But I don't know what it was about Uncle Nick. It was just devastation, and I had to kind of turn away and cry for a while. I don't think he knew. But that was the level of connection I had with Uncle Nick. So I'm 10 years old, and before I turn 11, I'm struggling so badly with myself that I turned to him and spoke with him several times, not bringing the topic all the way forward, mostly asking about him. And of course, his radar is up and he knows something's going on. So then he would occasionally ask me, "Are you all right? Do you need to talk about anything? Is everything all right?" You know, and we'd sit down and then we would talk. So he knew that I wanted to talk, just not what about. And by the time I had turned 11, I mean, just turned 11, it might have been my birthday party for all I know, at the house, I told Uncle Nick, "I really need to talk to you about something." And so he took the time, several times during that family visit, to sit down, and I still didn't have the courage to tell him. But another week later, he was by the house on a weekend, and said, "Hey, you know that thing you wanted to talk about? You know, what do you think? Are you ready to say something or talk?" And I was, finally. It took me nearly a year. And so I sat down, and I remember exactly what I told him. I said, "Uncle Nick, I don't know why, but I really feel like I probably should have been a girl. Why was I born a boy when I feel like I'm supposed to be a girl? It doesn't make sense to me." And he wasn't precisely sure what to say because there was a bit of a pause. But his answer was very unique, and he said, "We're all challenged in life, and we all do the best that we can. And you know that I have my difference and uniqueness that makes me who I am. And in life, that's been a struggle and a challenge. And you may very well face the same struggles and challenges in your life, but for different reasons." And at the time, I processed that information the best I could, but that was where we started. And he would check in with me, and then I would talk. And we talked more, and by the time I was at least 12, I may have still been 11, I told him, "You know, I steal clothes from my friends' sisters and moms. And when nobody's around, I just spend time being a girl." And he said, "Well, that's fine. It's, you know, not that uncommon. Lots of young boys do that." I asked if he had done that, and he said no. And I said, "Well, I don't know if I'm doing something wrong." And he said, "You're not doing anything wrong, but you shouldn't steal." Well, I didn't know what else to say to that. There was no offer of buying me any wardrobes, so it's like, okay. It didn't stop me. So, you know, the little cross-dresser who started when he was 5 was still swiping a something here or there. And it wasn't just, you know, underwear or anything. And some of my friends, that's all they were interested in, was swiping underwear. I just thought everybody was that way, that we all just wished we weren't boys. But I don't think that was normal either, so I mean, what am I to say? But through the years, I confided in Uncle Nick over and over, and he was the one I confided in, and I don't know what I would have done without him. He kept me going so many times when I was so confused, and I still talk to him up to about the age of 17, and maybe once or twice when I was 18. But my mother gave me some advice when I was struggling and sat me down and said, when you get married and have kids, these feelings are going to go away. So within weeks, I was attempting to get my college girlfriend pregnant. And I succeeded. And I thought I was on the path to fixing myself, so I think that's when Uncle Nick and I stopped talking. Because I was certain I knew what I was doing. I was all grown up now. I wish I'd spent more time talking with Uncle Nick and less time taking bad advice. But I will say my mother said what she said out of love and possibly some level of understanding. So those years spent discussing that topic with Uncle Nick were priceless. Remember, I used to, when I first had my own car, I used to drive down to his little bungalow in Los Gatos and spend time talking with him, telling my mom that I was out driving around with friends or going to the music store. I wasn't, and I lied. I was with Uncle Nick. He was extremely patient. I learned later that he was a counselor at the Billy DeFrank Center. And I remember him going to class for psychology and working towards being a gender therapist. Sometimes I wonder if that all happened because he wanted to help me somehow. I've talked to a few of the people at Billy DeFrank when I go to group, and one person there seems to think she remembers him. He passed away in either late 1991 or 1992, and this person had started working there in 1990. I really need to reconnect with that person and ask what they remember. His daughter, however, has completed her studies as a gender therapist and is now a gender therapist, fulfilling her father's pathway. How amazing is that? And she's a dear, wonderful person. A family member who accepts me and will not turn away. So is my uncle's partner. A lovely person. Absolutely a joy to be with. He lives quite a distance away, but whenever he comes anywhere near this area, I make absolutely certain that we get to see one another. And I do call him from time to time. He's family. And who knows, maybe someday that'll be the bridge back for me. It's hard to say for certain, isn't it? But that was my uncle, and I loved him. I hope you liked all that mushy family stuff, but I thought I would share. I know I talked about it earlier. I'm off to work, so I will catch up with you later. Just know that you're not alone, and your pathway may have been different than mine, and it might be different going forward, or maybe you just like watching the channel. At any rate, just know that I'm going through all of this and you get to come with me. And if you're struggling, there are resources like transgenderpulse.com. They have gender therapist resource pages and suicide hotlines for those who are really struggling. Use them. Reach out for help. That's what it's all there for. So take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time.